Yeah, so in 2016, as the presidential campaign was kind of ratcheting up and the tone kind of got a little ugly, specifically around immigrants. And then following the 2016 presidential elections, there was a lot of um, concern in communities here in Central Oregon. And people started approaching the Latino Community Association saying, hey, what do you think about, and I think the first person who spoke to us was in Bend and said, what do you think about Bend being a sanctuary city? And, our response was, well, there's a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding around what that means. And we don't think that's going to fly too well here in rural Oregon. And because of all that baggage that term comes with. And so we reached out, found Welcoming America, and the opportunity to be a welcoming city sounded a whole lot better. Not that it was really that much different in fact, in practice, but in name, it was a lot different. So Welcoming City, Welcoming America, George Zavala is going to tell us all about Welcoming America, so I won't get into that. But the principles which he will share are the principles that we want to emulate, that we want to practice here in Central Oregon. And so that's what mattered to us. We thought that it was really important to be vocal about that and to organize our communities around those principles of inclusion. And that's what we did. So we started putting energy into, we had a lot of volunteers involved. We had a change.org petition for Bend and City of Redmond. That's kind of where we put our energy because that's most of where our Latino Community Association staff and volunteers were, the majority. And so Bend took it on first. Actually, we joined first in December of 2016. And then in 2017, we started spreading the word. We started putting these petitions out into the community, getting signatures, using the change.org. And we got about 616 signatures on change.org and another about 250 handwritten petition signatures. It's almost 1,000 signatures, mainly again in Redmond and Bend. The city of Bend took it on first and passed a proclamation for Immigrant Heritage Month in June, and then shortly thereafter passed a resolution to become a welcoming city officially through Welcoming America. And the city of Redmond in October, a little bit later that year, 2017 again, took it on as well, and they weren't comfortable joining Welcoming America, but they passed a proclamation that's pretty darn close in its principles and its language and its intent. So proclamation for a welcoming and inclusive city. But at that point we were kind of spent and out of energy, and I believe the folks from Matters can let us know when there's an opening. If you passed a proclamation, we kind of heard a rumor you did, but never got it confirmed. So I'd love to know. But anyways, the idea again is intent. We don't want our communities, and I guess I'm saying we, the Latino Community Association, y'all can speak for yourselves, but we don't want our community to be a community where that's ruled by, folks looking out across their town and seeing, by and large, seeing people of color who they associate with immigrants. Most people here don't associate white folks as immigrants, and yet we have immigrants from Ireland, immigrants from Canada, you name it. But nonetheless, there's an intersectionality between color and immigration that a lot of people associate. And we don't want our folks here to be looking across and seeing people of color and associating them, number one, as immigrants, but number two, as immigrants being a bad thing. And so we want to just start a conversation. And Welcoming America provided a framework for that conversation. They provide principles, they provide, they've been at this for a while now. George will tell us how long, but it's been at least a decade, I think. And they provide, so they've got the experience of working with cities around our country who want to also unite their communities around the principles of inclusion, where everyone feels welcome. And so it's not limited to immigrants and refugees, but it does have, Welcoming America does have a focus on immigrants and refugees because immigrants and refugees are often the people in, especially rural communities that get marginalized. And it's often because of their skin color and or language or accent, you name it. So again, intention and values, we want to start conversations. We want our communities to be inclusive. We want our communities to be welcoming, and we want to counter anything that is against those two principles. And we want to do that peacefully, and we want to do that through conversation and bringing people together and building bridges. So this is, I have to say, this is a beautiful moment. The funny thing about COVID-19 is it's a bizarre time we're living through, but it's brought us together more than ever, at least digitally. So Zoom meetings are frequent and pretty rich, to be honest. And this one is impressive. What a beautiful group of people, powerful group of people, a lot of decision makers, a lot of people with fantastic ideas, huge hearts. Hopefully we can all come together around, again, the principles of being welcoming and inclusive. And we need to be public about that. We can't, it doesn't do us much good for our cities. It's a step forward, but it doesn't do us a lot of good for our cities to pass a proclamation and then just sit on it. It needs to be, if we're gonna pass proclamations, if we're gonna say we value these things, this is important to us as leaders of our city, we need to make that public, we need to make that known, and we need to start conversations around it. So again, I just want to thank everybody, each one of you, for being here, and I'm gonna shut my mouth and let's move on.
Thank you, Brad. Next, we're going to invite Michaela Oliver with the City of Bend so that she can share what has been the City of Bend perspective and journey with Welcoming America.
Hi everyone, I am Michaela Oliver. I'm the Community Relations Manager with the City of Bend. I'm excited to be here today. The City of Bend became a welcoming city in 2017, as Brad said, when we first passed our first proclamation that we were going to be welcoming to all community members, including immigrants and refugees. So becoming a welcoming city, we joined hundreds of other cities across the US that are dedicated to making our community more inclusive and welcoming to all of our community members. We're guided by the principles of inclusion and creating communities that prosper because everyone feels welcome, and that includes immigrants and refugees. It's been neat to see Welcoming America blossom over the last few years, and I say that because when we initially started with the program, the focus really was on immigrant and refugee community members, and that's expanded to all community members, including LGBTQ and people of color, the BIPOC community. And so this is one of the first years that we've been able to expand the reach for a lot of the programs that we're doing during Welcoming Week, and we'll talk about that in a second, to include more community groups. And really, the more the merrier. We operate with the conviction that better decisions are reached when multiple backgrounds and perspectives are meaningfully engaged, and strive to create an equitable and collaborative environment in which differences are embraced and harnessed to achieve the best results. So being a welcoming city, we participate in Welcoming Week each year. Our role as a city in Welcoming Week is to provide some funding for community partners to host events during this week. Each year we work with those community partners to distribute the funding and develop a schedule of events for that week specifically. And then we've had a variety of events over the years that are all working to build a greater understanding, particularly among people who have concerns about or are unaware of changing demographics in our community. So by getting together and hosting these events, we're providing awareness and showing that through meaningful connections, we can become welcoming to all. It's been a really great opportunity to be involved with this, and my actually first day on the job was the beginning of Welcoming Week last year. So I'm relatively new, but it has been really exciting just to see all of the community members come together, especially today. Throughout the years, we've had 11 events in the first year, 14 in the second, and this year we received over 20 applications for funding for Welcoming Week events. And so we're really excited to see what comes out of that and what this week will look like. And I think just because we're short on time, I will leave it at that, but I'm happy to answer any questions about our experience after we hear from George today.
Thank you, Michaela. So yes, we're all here to hear from George. So without waiting any longer, please welcome George Zavala.
Sorry, it's been 5 months and I still can't unmute myself. Hi, everyone. So my name is George Zavala, and I'm the Western Regional Manager at Welcoming America. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure hearing and seeing everyone's faces. Thank you so much, Brad, Latino Community Association, Joanne, and all of you. I'm currently based in Palm Desert, California. So a little bit about me. I come from a small town and a large immigrant family. Before Welcoming America, I was the Director of Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Development for the YMCA of Metropolitan Los Angeles. That's actually how I first learned about Welcoming America. Similar to Michaela, my first task and project was partnering with Welcoming America on Welcoming Week to host events throughout the 26 local communities that the LAY covers. So I can personally say, professionally as well, that I love working at Welcoming America, and that I'm really excited to share more information about the great work that we do. So welcome again, and let me provide you with a little bit of overview and some of the goals for today. We will learn about the work of Welcoming America and walk away with new strategies and opportunities for partnership to advance welcoming in your communities. So Welcoming America inspires people to build a different kind of community, one that embraces immigrants and fosters opportunities for all. We are a leading movement of inclusive communities across the nation, becoming more prosperous by making everyone who lives there feel like they belong. We connect a broad network of nonprofits and local governments and support them in developing plans, programs, and policies that transform their communities into vibrant places where people respect each other and everyone's talents are valued and cultivated. Because when communities welcome newcomers, they become better places for everyone. We partner with more than 100 communities across the United States and are piloting international welcoming efforts around the world. We began this work approximately 10 years ago. And so, as Michaela also alluded to, we've expanded as times have also created more progress in a lot of the work that we're all doing. Feel free to learn more about Welcoming America at welcomingamerica.org. Who we are. Welcoming America inspires people to build a different kind of community, one that embraces immigrants and fosters opportunities for all. We are a leading movement of inclusive communities across the nation toward becoming more prosperous and making everyone who lives here feel like they belong. Welcoming America provides a roadmap and support for communities that are becoming more inclusive towards immigrants and all residents. Bipin Kachadia, owner of Cocoberry Pops, is the perfect example of how important supporting one another can be toward creating lasting change in our communities. Take a look. I'm going to share this video, so if it's a little laggy, there are also subtitles.
Every day I pass through here, and one day I contact the landlord and I say, I want that corner. I'm Bipin Kachadia. I'm the owner of the Cocoberry Pops. And when we opened the business, we have 8 flavors. Now we have up to 32 flavors in the menu.
This corner was completely run down in an eyesore. For Bipin to come in here and change it into this beautiful place, it's created created this kind of commons town center. People now reference this. It's right next to Cocoberry.
Well, Louisville's going through a lot of growth right now, and one of the most dynamic areas is the growth of our international community. Welcome. Refugees and immigrants overcome so many challenges to get to our country in the first place. So, you know, the resilience that they have is a real asset, and we see that in their entrepreneurship. We see that when they start new businesses. We see that when they're employees as well.
This neighborhood is always supporting new business. They're always helping.
This zip code is actually the most diverse in Louisville. And what we're finding is that there's someone Cuban's your next door neighbor. There might be, you know, someone Syrian across the street. Then there's someone who's lived here in the South End forever. And people are building a community together.
Your color, it don't matter to me. It's about the person that's on the inside. America's still the big dream, you know. It's the melting pot. Everybody come work hard and live the dream, so I welcome them all.
Having immigrants come to our end of the city in particular has been wonderful. I think they bring an enrichment, a culture. They're wonderful Americans. They're wonderful neighbors.
The beauty of our country is that we're a diverse, pluralistic country. And that's our strength as well. And demographically, that's what we're going to continue to be. I think it's all of our responsibility to reach out and help each other, and also to see our country grow in such a positive and dynamic way. And especially in today's environment, it's important that refugees and immigrants understand that they're welcome in our city.
We liked it here. We didn't look around somewhere else to go, you know, just got settled here.
And will you stay in Louisville?
Yes, definitely, yeah.
So currently, we work around the US and most recently have expanded internationally, working in Australia, Canada, Germany, Mexico, New Zealand, Spain, and the UK. So how do we do this? Our approach. Who here is a gardener? You all know that a gardener would never throw seeds into the dirt without first amending the soil, adding compost, and making sure the soil was healthy and full of nutrients. Yet why do we often throw people into communities and expect them to flourish without first amending the soil? We focus on making sure that the soil, aka the community, is nutrient rich so that plants, aka people, can grow and everyone can thrive. As communities are reshaped by demographic change, there must be an intentional effort to manage that change. Just as healthy soil is needed for a seed to grow, receptive communities are critical for immigrants to be able to fully participate in the social, civic, and economic fabric of their adopted hometowns. Welcome in America helps communities move beyond divisiveness and fragmentation to a coordinated web of policies and programs that ensure that all residents, including immigrants, can fully participate and belong. One of the ways we amend this soil is by changing the messages that are heard. The receiving community refers to the longtime residents of the places where immigrants settle. Receiving communities include people of all backgrounds, crossing many borders of race, ethnicity, class, and religion, and can even include more settled immigrant populations. As we think about the impact we want to make in this receiving community, it's important for us to remember that they may be longtime residents, very diverse themselves, whether it be racially, socioeconomically, etc. In some cases, may also have a migrant background themselves. They may have levels of unconscious fear or bias towards immigrants, or be ambivalent, or those who may not live and breathe this work, including our neighbors and loved ones. Who they are will depend upon the unique dynamics of the local community. Welcoming is about everyone, new and longtime residents. How can we truly be welcoming of newcomers if current residents who live here don't feel welcomed? If one population feels like they belong at the expense of another, we have failed. Welcoming is about all of us. More recently, we've seen the events in Minneapolis, Minnesota, Louisville, Kentucky, Los Angeles, California, and so many more communities across the country show us that we still have a long way to go to being a truly welcoming America. We cannot be welcoming when African Americans are repeatedly targeted because of the color of their skin. We cannot be welcoming when violence against our neighbors is minimized or ignored. We stand with our African American friends and neighbors in calling for justice and true accountability. When the shadow of terror hangs over us and our neighbors, this is not freedom. It is oppression, and it affects all of us. Conversely, when each person in a community feels they belong, everyone benefits. Each of us is empowered to be that change and obligated to make the problems of racism and injustice our own if we want to achieve a welcoming America. So how do we do this? The Welcoming Network encompasses places as diverse as Atlanta, Georgia, Austin, Minnesota, and Anchorage, Alaska. We connect community, government, and nonprofit leaders who want to transform their communities. We build the capacity of these leaders to plan for welcoming, working across sectors to identify and address barriers to full participation for immigrants and all community members. We help communities change local systems and culture as they create policies that reduce barriers, reinforce welcoming principles, and communicate the socioeconomic benefits of inclusion. What we aim to do is move to change the norms and policies. We begin by moving across the spectrum from fearful to tolerant to welcoming. We move to advance policy, practice, and culture change. And finally, we move to achieve whole community benefits where everyone can prosper. Welcoming America helps communities create their own roadmap for change, because while communities can count on our support for a framework and national best practices, local leaders know best and need to be invested in the strategies to make their own communities more welcoming. We've worked with cities and counties across the U.S. to strategically craft their welcoming plans. Through the implementation of these plans, municipalities are able to create culturally and economically vibrant communities where everyone can thrive, participate, and belong. Many communities, like Dallas, shown in the slide photo, have created strategic plans that encompass their efforts and uplift the needs of their communities so that they can hold themselves accountable for achieving their goals. We do this by focusing on 7 key areas, which are the standard and our framework. The framework covers the main buckets of focus of our work. It also serves as a roadmap for certification. The framework areas include government leadership, so the local government implements systems and programs that strengthen community efforts and embed inclusion within government agencies. Equitable access, so this ensures community services and opportunities are available to all residents, including immigrants. Civic engagement, meaning all residents, including newcomers, fully participate in civic life by increasing access to leadership and democratic spaces. Connected communities, so we work to build connections between newcomer and longer-term residents by strengthening relationships and communicating shared values. Education, all students have the support they need to succeed in school and the education they need to succeed in the workforce. Economic development, harnessing the full potential of all residents. Economic development systems are prepared to leverage new and existing talent. Finally, safe communities, where we foster trust and build relationships between residents, including newcomers and local law enforcement and other safety agencies. So how communities design and implement the welcoming standard is as critical as the content. Our unique approach increases the impact and sustainability of welcoming. We believe all programs and partnerships should have these strategies in place. Set goals, monitor impact, and adjust strategies as needed. Identifying priorities and allowing for course correction are critical to impact when limited resources are available. Monitoring and evaluation also help communities know if they are reaching immigrant residents with programs and meeting their stated goals. 2, build connections between the immigrants and longer-term residents. Just as fertile soil is needed for a seed to grow, receptive communities are critical if immigrants are to thrive. Engaging longer-term residents in immigrant inclusion programs and partnerships reshapes the boundaries of us and them, building more unified and welcoming communities. Provide equitable access. Where, when, and how a person can access services can significantly impact participation and outcomes. Designing programs and partnerships to increase access to different religions, cultures, races, ethnicities, physical and mental abilities, ages, genders, and sexual orientation is essential to meeting the welcoming standard. Welcoming communities connect new residents to their neighbors and to local government, creating a climate where immigrants and refugees become deeply involved in their communities and invest their time, money, and hopes. Communities gain a competitive edge when they recognize diversity as an asset and take steps to attract and retain global talent while investing in the success of all residents. We all benefit when there is an intentional effort to ensure all residents, and particularly new Americans, are engaged at their fullest potential. When we all feel like we belong, we're more likely to participate. A culture that is more connected to the world means more commerce and more offerings to attract and attach people to their communities, which is especially important in places with declining populations. When local policymakers, businesses, and residents take steps to create a welcoming community, there also can be a significant economic return on those investments. Now, let me introduce you to our Rural Welcoming Initiative. So a little bit of background on our Rural Welcoming Initiative. Immigrants and refugees come to this country searching for safety and opportunities for education, employment, and ultimately to be part of a thriving community. While some make the large cities of the US their new homes, many follow the opportunities that present themselves in smaller cities and more rural parts of the country. Rural communities often have quite a bit to offer these newcomers: steady employment, a reasonable cost of living, social cohesion, and for many, the chance to live in a place that is similar in size to where they come from. While newcomers may initially be drawn to rural places out of economic necessity, they stay when these smaller and more rural places start to become home. Immigrants and refugees feel welcomed when communities have created programs, partnerships, policies, and opportunities that engage them. Rural areas often thrive in return, in part because their US-born population is typically older, and newcomers often help revitalize and add vibrancy to rural communities. So some of the benefits to applying and being accepted into this program are free Welcoming Network membership. So our current membership program is on a tiered membership level. And so each rural community will receive a free 2021 core membership in the Welcoming Network. Membership benefits include access to training, technical assistance, and peer exchange opportunities, including 2 free registrations to Welcoming America's annual conference. The next is coaching and technical assistance. Each community will be eligible to receive 4 hours of individualized coaching and technical assistance to support their local work. Each will have a coach to help ensure their technical assistance needs are fully met. A coach from Welcoming America will provide regular telephone consultations to help rural communities establish welcoming goals, address challenges, and connect to helpful resources as appropriate. Some communities will also be eligible for an in-person visit/training. The final is peer learning. Rural communities will be provided the opportunity to connect with and learn from each other, both virtually and in person, at Welcoming America's National Conference. This year, the Welcoming Interactive, or in 2021, the Welcoming Interactive will be held in Charlotte, North Carolina in April. So how to get involved? Local communities must commit to advance at least one of the following actions in the 2021 membership year. So it's either pass welcoming resolution, convene community leaders for a conversation on welcoming work, meet one area of the welcoming standard, or host a welcoming event. So next we're going to be talking about Welcoming Week, an opportunity for many communities who aren't necessarily or who could potentially not be at that level of engagement member or any of that, but this is a great touch point for organizations, local municipalities to really get involved. So what is Welcoming Week? Through Welcoming Week, organizations and communities bring together immigrants, refugees, and longtime residents to build strong connections and affirm the importance of welcoming and inclusive places in achieving collective prosperity. Across the globe, welcomers are leading the way. In 2019, there were just over 2,600 welcoming events in 250 communities with more than 80,000 people participating and over 10 million social media impressions. At a time when political rhetoric has deepened divisions and the COVID-19 pandemic has renewed anti-immigrant and anti-Black sentiment, Welcoming Week reminds us to double down on our inclusive vision and find new ways to bring together people across lines of difference to support and develop greater understanding and mutual support. So here are some ideas for Cook County, Deschutes County, Jefferson County, cities like Redmond, Madras, Sisters, and Prineville. You can host a cooking demonstration with a local immigrant chef. You can recognize immigrant entrepreneurs through a virtual award ceremony. You can host a virtual naturalization test preparation workshop, host a virtual watch party for a film, host a community driveway chalk art competition with the theme of welcoming or building home together. Or you can host a virtual civic dinner on belonging. As we know, COVID has really impacted the way that Welcoming Week efforts and events are typically held. More likely there are in-person events, potlucks, screenings of films, whatever that might be. And so Welcoming America has really tried this year to adapt a lot of the programming that we would typically recommend for communities and really tried to incorporate more of that virtual online platform, but still trying to maintain that level of engagement so that people feel connected. So please, let's stay in touch. Let's work on this together. Feel free to email me at george@welcomingamerica.org with any questions. You can check out our social media pages, our website, and connect with us on LinkedIn. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, George. That was very concise yet full of nutrient information. I think the big takeaway is that this is ongoing work, that we all have to play a part of it, and that we can do it together, that it's necessary, that we have to be intentional about setting these goals and holding ourselves accountable. So this has been a beautiful opportunity, but because we're all here together and our different cities and different organizations work a little bit different, we have to take advantage of this opportunity to ask George questions. So you are welcome to raise your hand, type your question on the chat, or just unmute yourself and share your questions. But yeah, please, let's take advantage of this moment. No one wants to break the ice.
Oh, I will. George, this is Eileen Kiley, and I'm wondering, what do you find as the barriers that, in order to really get these events moving forward, what are the things that we need to overcome as a community in order to be more effective in this?
I definitely think that coming from my own experience working at the YMCA of LA, a lot of what I experienced more so than anything was just a disconnect, more so of community members from organizers, from events, locations. And so just really thinking about who the most trusted kind of communicators of messages and the relayers of information are for our communities that we're specifically trying to outreach to. And then really just understanding and hearing and uplifting those voices to help kind of incorporate those perspectives into the planning process. I think sometimes as organizers, we want to be able to do everything and be able to kind of provide these events for the community as opposed to with the community. And so I think sometimes it can start there, wherever you are, however large your organization is, whatever resources you have. I think that the most important piece is always including those that you're trying to advocate for and work with, so that way you'll always be surprised at how willing and how wanting a lot of individuals are to participate and volunteer and help.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen.
Thank you. So important to center the impacted as we do our work, right? Not just during Welcoming Week, but throughout the rest of the year, right? It's important that we think of who is hardest hit by oppression, by inequality, so that we can create a community and we make decisions that keep them not only in mind, but in the budget and in decision-making table. Anybody else has questions? I see one here in the chat. It says, City of Redmond has adopted a proclamation of welcoming, but has not joined the national organization. Suggestions for moving forward, for moving Redmond into the next step is appreciated. So what would you recommend to a city that has done a proclamation but has not joined the organization?
Definitely reach out to me and we can connect offline, and I can work with you individualized kind of time, so that way we can see what's going on in your local city. But other than that, on our website, we have a pre-assessment that local municipalities can kind of go through to kind of for themselves, just to be able to understand where they're at in the process. Because this work is so unique to so many communities, organizations. It's really important to start there and just really recognize where you're at and be able to identify language and some gaps, and then being able to move from there and start at those points.
Thank you, George. So it's very rewarding to know we have support. We're not alone. There's a big network across the country and the world now that is being intentional on creating a welcoming and inclusive culture. So I have another question here on the chat. Beyond Welcoming Week, how can nonprofits in our region support this effort?
So we offer Welcoming Week, like I mentioned, is one of the first ways that organizations, local municipalities can really engage with a lot of this work, especially if you're not sure what kind of the sentiment is in your community or kind of like the feel of where you're all at. But beyond that, we offer year-round technical assistance programs. We offer opportunities for people to meet in person at our annual interactive. We also, really just reach out to myself or our membership team member, and we will be able to help you identify kind of what works best for you. And as I mentioned, a lot of what we offer is tiered, and so we also offer scholarships. Most of the programs, similar to the Rural Initiative, also incorporate membership into your application if you're selected. So there's a ton of ways that you can engage with Welcoming America, and there's a lot of free resources on our website that if you're not sure if the membership is where you are headed or if that's necessarily what you want, you can get a feel for some of the resources that we offer on our website in our resource library.
Thank you, George. So here in the chat, we have a question regarding the Welcoming Week events. The question is, since the city of Bend does these events, is that a thought for other cities? And I also first want to distinguish that Welcoming Week, it's just one of the ways in which the principles, right, of Welcoming America are incorporated into our organizations and our city government in the everyday work we do. But Michaela, would you please like to talk a little bit about the work the city of Bend has done with Welcoming Week?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm happy to talk to this, and I don't know that we've actually shared the dates of Welcoming Week this year. It's going to be September 12th through the 20th. And George can talk to what other regional cities do. As far as the city of Bend goes, we have asked our community partners that we've worked with in the past and new ones this year, based on a list of people who have been interested in Welcoming Week, to propose events that they want to host during this week. And so what we've done after we receive all of those is partnered with I3, which is another community group in Bend, to have them review those applications and help us choose which events are going to be take place during Welcoming Week. So the city of Bend, other than funding, we really don't have too much of a hand in selecting the actual events this year, which is new from years past.
Yeah, so I think that centers the community engagement. This year has been a little bit different because we are connecting through Zoom, but in prior years, the experience is that we have a room full of community members from marginalized, underserved communities that have ideas on what it feels to be welcome to us, and we propose those ideas to the city. And the city has been great in supporting those ideas, right? That is I think that the purpose of having these welcoming week events is not only to highlight our immigrant and refugee community members, but all community members that are participating at the margins of society, and bring them to the front fork and celebrate our differences, celebrate the diversity within our community. So thank you, Michaela, for sharing on that. Here's another question. Since the city of Bend is a welcoming city, does that extend to organizations within the city scope?
So no, what we would have to do is, so the City of Bend would be a member of our network, and then we would work individually with the organizations that want to participate. One thing that we have noticed at Welcoming America and that we are really working to address is what I've noticed as well in the comment or in the chat box around regional approaches to this work. And so we are starting to work a lot more with coalitions, collaboratives, and so we're trying to identify what that best method is for really encompassing all of the organizations and entities that kind of comprise those regional coalitions. When it comes to the counties themselves can become members, as we have examples from Salt Lake County, and so that process is essentially the office or the county office of immigrant affairs or a county office within that structure will apply to become a member, and then we can work with them. Part of the certification and the Certified Welcoming Program really dictates that it be done through a local government. And so let's say whatever county office would like to begin that process, then that extends throughout all of those cities within that county region.
Great, so it's good to hear that counties can join Welcoming America and be intentional on having values of inclusion and equity within their framework of operation. We have another question. Sherry, would you like to share your question, please?
Thank you, Joanne. My question is for you and Brad and Michaela and George. I have a lot of concerns around our students of color, our immigrant students, and our LGBTQ students as we are doing distance learning. And I'm wondering, with Welcoming Week falling over the start of school, which is supposed to be September 14th, if there is an opportunity to include our students that are struggling and are essentially isolated from their normal peer groups and their support groups and their teachers and the school staff. I'm really struggling with how do we make sure that they have equal access to education and equal access to support, and how do we kind of wrap our arms around them to make sure we can lift them up as well as make them feel welcome. And so I'm wondering if you all have any ideas around this and how we can include our students so they don't feel left out as we go through this COVID crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. I can share a little bit from the LCA perspective. So LCA has been at the forefront of the answer to COVID-19 when it comes to the Latinx and immigrant community in Central Oregon. So we are providing support, not only financially to those workers that were left out of the federal stimulus check and support, but we're also designing our services to accommodate to COVID-19. So we provide a summer program for members of the Latinx and immigrant community that may not have access to expensive summer camps and whatnot. This year we modify it, and it's called Arte con Amigos, Art with Friends. And we had a good collaboration from community members, not only volunteers, but we actually also had Bend PD reach out and participate. So us as community, as Latinos, Latinx, we are supporting our own community. I would like to say that the issues that are impacting the Latinx community and other communities of color were here way before COVID-19. And one event during Welcoming Week may not be the way to address the needs that our community has ongoing. However, because we are mindful that it's important to have resilience, to have that hope for the future, that faith, the Latino Community Association is planning a Latino Fest virtual celebration of the diversity within Latinidad, so that we can bring joy and cheer to our own community. But also, I want to acknowledge that throughout the past, because our planning sessions fall during the summer where schools are closed and they start right at the beginning, it has been hard to engage the school districts and our college and universities here locally. So that's something where we can still work. But again, I think that the principle is that these standards are not for 1 week, but they are ongoing, and they need to be embedded in how we make decisions and how we allocate budgets, in how we interact with each other on a day-to-day basis. I don't know if anybody else would like to add to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Sherry. So I think that what I can speak to right now, knowing that the applications for Welcoming Week are currently under review, is that we have applications from Ben Lapine Schools, Ben Police Department, Unitarian Universalist, Fathers Group. There's a number of community partners that have put in specifically programs for children. And because of COVID-19, we don't necessarily know if they're going to be virtual, hybrid, live. That is kind of fluid at the moment. But we've seen a lot of focus on family game night or with Ben Police Department, and we've seen the Ben Lapine Schools do a year-long pledge commitment where they're asking kids to join them in sharing their stories and why they want a welcoming city to live in. And so I think there's some really cool opportunities on the table, and after that the events are set, just looking at them and seeing where there's ability to partner or to grow off of would be a really good opportunity.
And also, I think that I want to add that right now we're doing these welcoming events within the umbrella of the City of Bend. How would this event look if we do them under the umbrella of Deschutes County, right? How could we collaborate? So there is a lot of possibility. There's a lot of promise with this initiative, and we're just tapping into the beginning stages of the community we are envisioning for Central Oregon in the future. So thank you for that question. I have another one here that highlights, is there a path for welcoming immigrants, minority-owned small businesses through these events? Michaela or George, do you have any suggestions regarding minority-owned businesses and how can they be supported through these events?
Yeah, I can take a little bit. I think we've seen quite a few groups, community groups come together, not so many businesses, and we would love to see that, because I don't think that just because you're an immigrant or minority owned small business doesn't mean that you can be a part of these events. If you have an idea of something that you want to do during this week that you think would be impactful, we want to see it. We want to hear about it. And really, we encourage innovation in this idea, especially this year, when we really don't know what's going to happen in a month.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Michaela. Speaking to that, just kind of brainstorming and thinking of ways that you can kind of, similar to what was mentioned earlier, work with a lot of the locally owned businesses, minority owned businesses, immigrant owned businesses, to figure out how you can spotlight or direct traffic their way, purchases, whether that be through, again, an entrepreneur award ceremony, any of those ways that you can really incorporate those businesses into your plan is a great start.
Thank you. Yes, we want to not only focus on being welcoming, but acknowledging that we need to have that economic prosperity among all community members for us to thrive together. I have another question. Nancy, would you like to share your question next, please?
I just put it in the chat because I wasn't sure if you saw that I had my hand raised. So I was just wondering if you can speak to, if Brad or Michaela or Joanne, if you guys can speak to what have we been doing in Bend beyond the Welcoming Week activities? Because it looks like there's additional aspects to Welcoming Week, which where we can kind of imbue the principles and values of Welcoming Week into our city and community, you know, more broadly, and where we feel it throughout the year.
Michaela or Brad, would you like to talk about the other ways in which we embody these values throughout the year?
Yeah, I'll say a few things. Thanks, Nancy, for the question. So there are a lot of things going on, and I know that there's things that, you know, I am not aware of. Latino Community Association, you know, our team is not aware of, and that's a good thing. There's stuff going on beyond, you know, our scope. But the things I do know about, there's restorative justice and equity group in the Bend Pine schools that's focused on, you know, essentially the same principles, not necessarily immigrants and refugees specific, but you know, kids of color and marginalized youth that you know, we working on a different way to deal with behavioral issues that you know, need to be listened to and understood, and not just acted against. That's one. There's community conversations going on throughout the year, not a lot, but several. I had something else and now it's gone. It's gone, sorry. Anybody else have something to add? There's other people on this call that I'm sure are involved in, on the Zoom, that are involved in activities that are, you know, promoting, being intentional about increasing equity and inclusion.
Yeah, not to put him on the spot, but Paul Kansky or Clint Burley, you guys, the Bend Police Department has been working really closely with the LCA and building those community relationships throughout the year. So I don't know if one of you is willing to take that.
Yeah, I will. I don't know if Clint's still having technical difficulties. I know he can hear some of this, and he's definitely a lead on it. But I know we're involved with just numerous events throughout the year with the schools and the LCA, where they come to for some of the just celebration events about diversity. And those have been, man, over the years, or just even in the short time, a couple of years, we're seeing how the families interact with police in a whole different way, and not just the children, but the parents. And I think that's been the most enlightening to me, is we start to see these relationships build that just lead to, I guess, that real conversation we're talking about. And a lot of times that then leads to, I don't know, just future events that are even informal, that maybe aren't even on the radar, as kind of Brad pointed out a minute ago, of LCA or the police. Just maybe it's a few officers going to another agency or group's event just for 5 or 10 minutes to show a face and show support. So a lot of those real basic ones are the ones that bring the real relationships, the real change, at least in some capacity, the real change. And there's several others. I wish Clint could talk to him, because he's definitely aware of them, but just some of the smaller ones, but again, not so small. The Christmas events that we got to be a part of in delivering gifts with families, and just more so than delivering gifts, just interacting. You know, this year, that was such a great event. And I know, Joanne, you were there, and Oscar was there, and Brad, it was just, those were great events where we get to engage on a real level. And then those discussions are just natural, rather than discussions about how to change. We see just real relationships building. So those are a couple that come to mind. There's a lot of others. I know we were real excited about working with Dallas PD on some future training of our department to kind of grow in our diversity training. and specifically with the Latino community members. And unfortunately with COVID, that's kind of on hold, right? But that was going to be another neat event for our whole department, I feel, to kind of get just intentionally change our culture even more and more internally in the PD to just continue to grow. So I may comment on a few others, but I'll see if Clint, are you there? Are you able to talk again? No, you can't.
Well, he tried. I think that you know what Officer Kansky said is also embedded within the city's culture, or we're trying to get there. So this biennium, 2019 to 2021, we have a council goal of embedding diversity practices into the work that we're doing, making sure that everyone has a seat at the table, that we're being representative of who our community is. And it's been neat to see some of the stuff that's come out of that. But one initiative that's being worked on right now is developing a diversity, equity, and inclusion task force that can really speak to what the needs of our minority community members are, and how we can support those. So yes, Welcoming Week is just a very small piece of the puzzle. This is a ongoing effort, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and all of the activities that we're doing. And we're not perfect, but we're getting better, and we're taking steps in the right direction. And so I think that you guys help us in that. Our, Welcoming America helps us in that. And we're just, like I said, always open to new ideas and new opportunities.
Thank you all. I have been involved with the City of Bend. I think this will be the 4th year that I am part of the Welcoming Week committee, trying to have these events that are door openers for further relationship. And one of the values that I strive to incorporate in the events we do when we partner up is cultural humility. So cultural humility focuses on self-humility, having a state of knowledge or awareness, and it's a strong self-reflective tool that encourages us to not only realize our privileges, but also our prejudices, right? So this is ongoing work, as Michaela and Paul mentioned, but we are discovering new values that we are centering our work on, right? So cultural humility is one of these new things that not only are we learning, but we are we're practicing as we move forward. So yes, it's ongoing work. I have a question here, and we're getting close to the end, so this may be the last one. I want to be mindful of everybody's time. It says here, how can cities and counties invest trying to advance these causes beyond the City of Bend's investment on Welcoming Week? So how can our region move this forward beyond what one city is doing, and incorporate not only all of our cities, but all of our counties regionally? George, I think that might be for you.
I think that again, it's similar to what is being said in the chat box around the intersectionality of a lot of this work, and understanding that it impacts so many of the different structures and different organizations, all members of the community. And so really thinking about how your community and where your community is at, and then from there, again, the most important piece is always uplifting those who we are trying to work for and with. And those voices and those perspectives, I think, are really important to bringing to the table, to really have a fully realized understanding of how and where you need to go in the work that we're trying to do, which is create welcoming and inclusive communities. And so I definitely think that there's a lot of resources on our website and our resource library. There's the self-assessment again, which I think another starting point is really just understanding where your community is at, and identifying those gaps as an opportunity to to advance forward and not necessarily needing to dwell on well, we don't have X, Y, and Z, because this work, it requires so much of so many people, and it's never going to be fully perfect. No one community has that that advantage over the other. So I think that that's those are some starting points for sure.
Thank you. And Michaela asks, how can we engage marginalized communities, refugees, immigrants, other communities of color to know about these efforts? And maybe how can organizations let marginalized communities know that they are welcoming?
I think that a lot of that also is dependent on identifying those leaders in the communities that we're trying to serve. And so whether that be religious leaders, whether that be entrepreneurial leaders, I think it really is about identifying those relayers of the message and then being able to communicate out to build that community trust, because that is essential, and that is one of the more crucial pieces of the work that we do, is really just building that community trust and making sure that we aren't othering people, even with the best of intentions that we all might have.
Thank you, George. This has been such a rich conversation. We have learned so much, and we have touched on so many topics, right? From diversity and inclusion to othering, to social justice, and what does that look like for different communities across Central Oregon. I want to thank all the folks in this call that represent all of Central Oregon. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your willingness to learn, but also to do the work to move us forward. I look forward to connecting with all of you. You are welcome to reach out to myself and Brad. Brad at Latino Community Association, Joanne at Latino Community Association. We look forward to continuing this dialogue, and hopefully by September we will have a whole welcoming region. If you are a decision maker, if you are a leader in your city, in your county, make sure you reach out to George Zabala. He's here to support us. Don't wait for the community to tell you we want this. Know that it's needed, and we look forward to your leadership. Thank you all for being here, and we will see you next time, all right? Bye-bye, y'all. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.